So we're getting the go ahead to begin, and we'll see as people join. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the Getting Hired in AI Tips for Landing Top Early Careers Roles panel. That is definitely a mouthful. My name is Adam Rikoshinsky, and I work for the Vector Institute in the Academic Partnerships Department. So today we are going to hear from speakers across 4 organizations with strong early careers opportunities. What we want to do is delve into useful tips on what job seekers can do better to stand out and enhance their candidacy for these types of positions. So as we all know, the early careers level typically is very competitive. There's lots of applications per job posted. The global pandemic, the state of the economy has only made things more competitive. So bottom line today, we need some great tips. A couple housekeeping items here before we introduce our panelists. So we are going to have a Q&A session. And I am noting, obviously, we started a little later, so we will make sure, though, that we have that. If you would like to ask a question, what I ask is that you use the chat function. So for those not familiar with Zoom, it's on the bottom of your screen, says chat. And what you can do is actually address your message privately to my colleague, Melissa Judd. Her last name, J-U-D-D. There you go. Thank you, Melissa. So just address the comments to her. We just want to keep the chat fairly clean, just so it doesn't distract any of our speakers today. And then at the end, Melissa will let me know some of our questions that we can ask our brave panelists. Other things as well, please do remain muted if you're not actively speaking. I will take my own advice, I promise. You just won't see it. I'll do it through this remote, but I will do it, and that's to avoid any kind of feedback, dog barking, you on a phone talking while the thing's going. We've seen it all. So please do that. And also, just so you know, on this panel, we've organized our questions for panelists here by recruitment stage. So we can start with the early application, resume screening, all the way to final interviews to give you the most value here. So we get through as many as possible. If we don't make it to the last question, well, you've been pretty far in the process. So I think you guys can handle it from there. Okay, let's introduce our panelists now. In the digital world, everybody here has access to the bios on the agenda screen or through this application. So I'm not going to read them word for word to spare you that, but I will give you a little brief overview on who we have here today. And panelists, as I introduce you, please just give a little head nod or wave. From CIBC, we have Aditya, who is a senior data scientist on the advanced analytics team. Hello, Aditya. Hello. And from KPMG, we have Mahmood, who is a manager talent attraction for KPMG Lighthouse. Oh, very nice wave. Thank you, Harris. For those of you who don't know, if you don't know this, you should research it. But just so you don't know, KPMG Lighthouse, that is their data and analytics center of excellence. So we are talking to the right person here on our panel. From Intact, we have Mark Ryan, who is a manager data science for Intact's Data Lab. And from Telus, we have Nikki Smith, manager technology strategy for the GTLP program at Telus. And for those who don't know, that is the Graduate Technology Leadership Program. Thank you all for being here. So what I wanted to do is start off, and we can just go in order. We can start Aditya, Mark, Harris, and then Nikki, is just to pass over the torch to our panelists to talk a little bit about early talent in AI at their organization and their particular area of focus. Over to you, Aditya, and just a note, I should say, between speakers, don't wait for me to, you can just go one by one, it's fine, so we save on the transitions. Over to you, Aditya.
Right, so I'm a senior data scientist at the advanced analytics team at CIBC, where we work as sort of internal consultants, data science and AI consultants for internal partners within the bank, such as small business banking, small and personal business, personal and small business banking, business banking, capital markets, marketing. And we help the bank build a competitive advantage by leveraging predictive modeling, natural language processing, and other machine learning techniques. to assist in better decision making. So we also act as a center of excellence for data science and AI in the bank. We conduct research mainly in areas of natural language processing and reinforcement learning. And we provide expertise, develop solutions for cross-functional business problems. So in our team, we consist of data scientists, senior data scientists, and research scientists. So data scientist is a junior role, typically someone with a bachelor's degree or sometimes even with a master's degree, but without work experience. But a senior data scientist is usually someone with a master's degree and some work experience, whereas a research scientist is someone with a PhD and is a much more research focused role. Yeah, over to the next person.
Thank you. Over to you, Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Ryan. I'm a manager at the data lab at Intact, and we have it's really kind of central to Intact's business as an insurance provider. So both the auto and home insurance, we really base a lot of the offerings around data science deliverables. So one of the big ethics within Intact is turning our data science work into something that's real. So we have teams that work on models to predict premiums for auto and home insurance. We have teams that work on claims analysis, teams that work on internal aspects of applying data science, and my team, which works on UBI, which is usage-based insurance. And essentially, this is providing clients with an adjustment to what they're paying for auto insurance based on their driving behavior. So we collect their with client's consent, collect information, telematics information from mobile app about their driving behavior, and then make predictions on their future claim behavior based on that, and then they can get a discount if the prediction is that their claim behavior in future is going to be low. So we have many opportunities within the data lab at Intact. There are large teams working in Toronto, Montreal, and Quebec City, and a wide variety of technologies. So we do teams working with classic machine learning, deep learning, NLP. So broad range of applications, broad range of technology, and a real dedication to using data science to provide value for the company and our clients.
Awesome, I believe I'm next. Hi everyone, this is Harris. I support talent acquisition, recruitment, hiring, all the fun things of hiring for KPMG Lighthouse. We are, as Adam said, we're the center of excellence for data analytics at the firm. What that really means is that being in consulting, obviously we work with external customers and clients from a data engineering, data science, modeling perspective. We also support internal service lines and functions such as our traditional revenue streams. If you think of what KPMG has done for the last 100-odd years as tax and advisory and a lot of work in audit. So providing that kind of niche, deep technical expertise to stakeholders internally, as well as being able to work with external customers. So external customers, I would say that if we were looking at it from a market segmentation standpoint, our bread and butter still is most of it is in financial services, so the big banks, so on and so forth. That would be 50% of the clients that we work with. The remainder is an even split between retail, hospitality, and government services. So to talk about our traditional kind of hiring and what our teams are made of. So Lighthouse is, I support hiring for Lighthouse in Toronto. We have Lighthouse locations across the globe. So wherever you find KPMG, you'll probably find a Lighthouse office in that region. The individuals that we hire range on the software side. So for development, we have engineers that we hire software architects. On the data side, we'll hire individuals that are data engineers, individuals that are data scientists, and similar to what some of the other panelists were talking about, we'll hire people who are coming from that kind of deep technical background in applied science, PhD or master's level. And that's a little bit of what we do.
Hey, it's Nikki with Telus. I apologize. I have a dog who's just started barking. She heard something in the hallway, so I will try to calm her down. So I manage our graduate technology leadership program, which is our new grad program. We hire undergrads and master's students into our program. We bring people in, as you can imagine, as a telecom company, we have a ton of data. So we bring people in who are looking at a lot of data analytics from a wireless perspective. So looking at, our customer experience, also looking at, anything that we can do from a marketing perspective. We have some data analytics in the security team as well, and in a few other pockets across the organization. So our program is hiring. Really excited to talk to you guys about the opportunities at Telus, and thanks for having me here today. And right now the dog's quiet. So.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, everyone, for your insights. And let's start off with a few questions here. By the way, if my internet slows down at all, you guys can't blame Nikki because I'm with Bell. So sorry, Nikki, we didn't use Telus, but that's just on that side. Okay, let's start off with the application stages. So here we go. When we come to someone is making an application to definitely one of your programs, there's a high volume of applications, as we've noted. So what are some of the best strategies for a candidate for them to differentiate themselves, A, before they apply for the role, and B, in their application itself? So this is a two-part question, differentiating themselves before application as well as in. Let's start off. We'll do Nikki, Harris, Mark, and then over to Aditya. Thank you.
Okay, so I think for me, the big thing is, do your research. So I think that's really important. When you're applying, making sure that your resume is tailored to the actual posting, and that it's clear and concise. I think we had about 1,200 applications this summer for our program. When a resume is, 5 pages, we don't have time to necessarily review all of that. So really making sure that your skill set comes through clearly. One of the other things I think is really helpful is, if you connect with anybody at Telus and they can refer you for the position, that also is important and helpful, because that means that we'll at least look at your application and take a look at your resume. So yeah, do your research, clear and concise resume, and reach out to people or try to get a referral. Those are my 3 tips.
I think it's over to me, right, Adam? Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yes. So similar kind of tips, but I will say if the networking aspect and like the reach out aspect is sometimes not talked about as much. It's really whether or not you have a job open that you're interested in today. I would encourage that you've done your research and you kind of know what area you're interested in. It's really easy now with LinkedIn or some of the other tools to find out who the likely hiring managers are for the group, who maybe the consultants are. It doesn't really have to only be the hiring managers that you reach out to, but starting early on. So if you know that, let's say, you're going to be looking for work in the next 2 to 3 months, start building on that. Build your network, reach out to people, introduce yourself. I think that once you have, and just in my experience, once we have a job posted, it's natural to see a lot of those kind of invitations, a lot of messages and stuff like that come through because the job is posted. So that's kind of a natural next step for people. But for me personally, those people always stand out that I've been able to connect with during the course of just kind of reaching out and speaking to them, even if a role is not actively open right away. So that I would say is the first thing. The second thing, if an application, I think the second part of your question was, in an application, how do you highlight it? And so what's really important is that, yes, we do get a lot of applications, but we're also fortunate that we have a pretty robust team that can kind of help us with, resume reviews and looking at cover letters and looking into, like, if you're a student, looking at your transcript and all of that stuff. So I think that from a consulting standpoint, being at KPMG, we look for a couple of things. So if you're able to articulate in your resume the nature of projects you've undertaken. So what was your role? What did you do? What was the project? I think that that's super important. And the other thing is, if you're submitting a cover letter, take the opportunity of that cover letter is kind of your story, everything that you couldn't put on your resume, right? And there's so many things you want to tell us about, maybe some of the projects you undertook, or some of the adversity you had, or just something about yourself that's not really standing out in your resume. And so between those two things, I think that they're probably the best tips that I could give in terms of like what you could do before you submitted an application, or what you could do in an application itself.
That's great, Harris. This is Mark. I'd like to follow up one of the points you made about LinkedIn LinkedIn, it's ubiquitous now. One thing I think is that really helps as distinguishing people is if they reach out directly to a manager through LinkedIn. It's a great way you can say, I'm interested in this, tell me a bit more about the job. That's a really great way to distinguish yourself. And it also shows initiative. It shows you've done enough research to find out who the right person is and have some questions. And whether or not the manager you speak to has a job that is an exact fit, you probably get some useful information having that discussion. The second thing, once somebody has made the application, and this may sound like it's sort of table stakes, well, of course people have it, they don't all have it, is a GitHub repo. So having that portfolio of code you're proud of, it doesn't need to be something really profound, but something you're proud of, something that you think is important. Sharing that can really help. It can really show off what you're able to do and help to answer some of the questions you might have otherwise. So those two things, you're reaching out to the kind of job you want to have, reaching out to a manager who might be able to get you that job through LinkedIn. And the second is making sure that you have a good GitHub repo with code that really shows off your skills, and you include a link to the repo in your CV, in your resume.
Right, so I'm going to add on to what the previous people have said. So prior to the application stage, yeah, research the job, research the company, and if possible, research the team so you can better assess how you fit in and how you can contribute. And like Ryan said, sometimes it can be a bit daunting, but sometimes you can actually approach the hiring manager on LinkedIn if you happen to know who he is or she is, and that might actually show initiative. And again, it depends on the managers. Some managers might not like it, but some managers would like it. And for them, it would be like, oh, this person has the courage and has shown initiative to contact me. So let's see what he or she has to say, right? So that's one good point. And again, like Ryan said, there's plenty of data sets online. So do some projects on your own. There's plenty of resources, submit some code on Kaggle, right? Track your performance there, highlight that on your resume, and also online learning certificates, right? It's nice to have a degree, but it's always good to be continuously learning, and certificates are cheap, right? They're not as expensive as degrees. So if you can highlight that you're continuously learning and improving yourself, other than just showing that you have a degree from a certain university, is a good thing to put on your resume.
Thank you all for the insightful responses. Very good practical tips there. And I guess Nikki's turned off her video. I think she mentioned her dog. Hopefully the dog didn't.
Fine.
Okay.
I'm just calming her down, so I will be back on video momentarily.
No problem, Nikki. I thought it was a pit bull or the dog turned loose. We were gonna get the police
no.
Okay.
She's just been on neighborhood watch at the moment. So, but I will be back on video shortly. But I'm still here.
Sounds good. There's more violent things in my house. I have kids, so they may. Hopefully, they don't come in here and take me. Okay. Anyway. Good insights. Let's go on to another question. We are still in the early application stages here. Let's talk a bit about technical skills and how to highlight those. So, there's different ways a candidate can highlight them. You can see that the giant box with all the technologies scattered in there one by one is one way, many others as well. What are some of the most effective ways that a candidate can highlight their technical skills? Let's start off with Mark here, over to Nikki, and then Aditya. Thank you.
I think what a lot of candidates struggle with is there's so much stuff that's kind of it's standard stuff. So Python, scikit-learn, Keras maybe. So having those things is going to, unless you know the job really is focused, for example, on Keras, it's going to be somewhat expected. So think about the things that you have that make you stand out. And in particular, from a business perspective, things that are part of, maybe they're not necessarily part of the academic stack, but would be important for a business stack. So there I'm thinking about things like relational database, Hadoop, Spark, and even on the rendering side, Tableau, Power BI. They're not particularly sexy applications, but knowing them and having expertise in them can really set you apart and give you the sense you can hit the ground running. I even go as far as saying Excel is an underappreciated data science tool, and somebody who can who can really do quick prototypes using very basic stuff, that can set somebody apart. So I'd say focus on the things that set you apart, not necessarily the bread and butter things, and particular things that are part of a standard business style.
Yeah, and to top up on that, I think what's important is, don't list down 100 different technical skills, right? Like keep it really to like maybe your best or most important technical skills. I've seen some done really nice where people list out like, a certain thing and then a proficiency, which I think, really then talks to it versus just listing out 100 things that you've maybe touched once. And then also, it's probably a given, but anything that you put on your resume, be prepared to answer a question about through some part of the interview cycle. So if you're not comfortable enough to answer a question about it, then I wouldn't put it on your resume from a technical perspective.
Thank you. Over to Aditya.
Right. So how do you show your technical? So, okay, there are two areas here, right? So if you have work experience or you don't have work experience. So if you don't have work experience, then you're going to talk about some of the projects that you have done in school, right? And also some of the projects that you have done in your own time. So when you talk about these projects, you got to highlight the objective of this project. Like, what are you trying to achieve with this work, right? And then and then talk about what technical skills have you used in trying to meet the objective for this project, and then how you measure your success or failure, right? So these are some things you can do when you don't have work experience. But when you have work experience, then highlight how you've used your technical skills to help the company or the organization, right? So highlight the practical aspects and always put in numbers. So I've used these technical skills, and by using these technical skills, I've been able to, increase profit or reduce churn by a certain number, right? So highlight these numbers. People like numbers, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Aditya, and thank you everyone for some good insights there. So it's some good insights, and I like that separation between, if you have the experience, because some of the folks here today may be doing their master's degree or PhD and have some of that, and others may not. So that's an important distinction. Thank you. Okay, so as far as our candidate pipeline, we're now moving to the initial screening stage. So you've made your application. You are now either getting a pre-screening call or whatever that next step of screening looks like. And that's where questions are going to focus. So when it comes to evaluating candidates in that initial conversation, whatever that looks like for your respective organization, what are really the main things you're looking to evaluate at this stage? And what are some advice you'd offer candidates to succeed in being shortlisted, really acing that stage? Let's go with Harris first, then Nikki, then Mark Ryan.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that I look for, like you've seen the resume, you schedule a call with the candidate for sort of that initial screening. Typically, we'll take about 40 to 45 minutes in that initial call. And though it's not a deep technical interview at this first stage, that might come, after that, we might do a coding challenge or what have you, a whiteboarding session as needed. So the most important thing is, like, I find that people are willing to talk a lot about all the things they're good at and all the things that they've done well. Really encourage individuals to be able to talk about overcoming adversity, right? We all kind of are overcoming a lot of challenges in our day-to-day, especially, and even more so individuals that are in technical roles where there's maybe a tight deadline or something that has to be delivered by a certain time. It's important to be able to articulate the challenges that you have overcome, how you overcame that kind of adversity. And if you are good at articulating, and being able to like connect the dots, it's great if you can take that question and then tie it to your experience and the kind of project work that you've done. So one of the big things that I look for is your ability to talk about the challenges that you have faced in your role, how you overcame them, all the things that you had to do, and some of the things that didn't go well. what you learned from it, and how you got better from that point on. So I would say that that's probably one of the most important things at that stage that I'm looking at. From a more work-related, I guess, screening piece, again, I think I mentioned earlier, but in the consulting world, we are always looking for individuals that have had that kind of customer exposure and that client engagement, right? So if you're a technical person and you're a technical guru, that's really great. But if you've had an opportunity to be able to be a part of maybe some form of a project where you were involved with customers and clients, or maybe you were in a delivery role where you engaged with a customer, I think those things are not talked about as much, especially when I'm interviewing folks that are coming from a more technical background. From KPMG's perspective, we love individuals that are, if you're new and you haven't really had that kind of exposure just yet, a willingness to put yourself out there and work with customers and external clients is something we really, really value. So hey, maybe you're new and just new in the job market and you haven't had a chance yet to do a lot of that, but if you're open to it and you can articulate why that excites you or why you think that that will enhance your overall profile and your experience, those are some of the things that I'm always on the lookout for, beyond kind of the day-to-day questions about, let's say, what we want in a software developer and what kind of tools and languages and programs, or on the other side for a data engineer, for example. So I would say that those are some of the things that I surely look out for in the first stage.
Awesome, thanks. So yeah, I think when we go through our first round, we're always looking at checking sort of those baseline technical skills. Communication is also super important. So, all of our teams operate across the country. So being able to communicate and communicate well is really important for us. And then we're looking for things like, can you work as part of a team? Can you collaborate? Are you innovative? Some of those kind of things that will make people successful long-term within Telus. To be successful, it's probably pretty standard, but like prepare, right? Like make sure you think through the job posting and you're saying, okay, what kind of questions am I going to get? What skills are important? And have some good examples ready, because the worst thing that you can do in the situation is not to present yourself the best way possible. So really be prepared, and also have questions ready to ask the interviewer. That shows that you've done your research, that you're really interested. If we finish up a first round phone screen and the person has no questions, then we kind of start to wonder, how interested are you really in the position? So those would be my tips.
Those are great. So Harris, you mentioned client focus. Nikki, you mentioned communication and teamwork. Those are both very important. I'd add on to that enthusiasm about the area. There are thousands, millions of people trying to get into data science, and people who are in it should have excitement about it. They should feel, what, I in addition to just this job, I want to learn more. I'm going to be learning and growing, and I'm on fire about this. People don't feel that way every day. But in general, we're very fortunate to be in this industry. So I would expect somebody who wants to be successful and wants to join an organization has that spark, has that enthusiasm. And then the other thing I'd say is some kind of reflection of technical breadth. And in a screening interview, there isn't that much time to necessarily go through that, but I think you want to communicate the idea that you've got different areas within data science that you're interested in. So those are the two things, in addition to what Harris and Nikki said, that I'd say are important for that stage of the process.
Thank you, Mark. And I really do like it when the themes come together. So you really hit on important points, because you're seeing across different industries here the same type of themes, which is really, really helpful to keep in mind. And I agree definitely on the point of the passion. I'm just getting fired up to apply at this point. I just have Excel though. I don't know. I mean, Mark, you said that's important, so maybe that's all I got. I learned XLOOKUP the other day. It's better than VLOOKUP. So I'm almost there. Perfect. Thank you. And great to see, by the way, on our audience. I see your questions coming in on the side. We got about 110 people I'm seeing floating around that. So thank you for the great engagement, because those will be some really good questions I'm seeing for our panel. Okay. So we are still in the initial screening stage at this point. We're going to leave it soon. But quick question just for two of our panelists here, more on the technical side. So for Mark and Aditya, which technical skill sets do you find are most lacking in candidates that are applying for AI roles? So that's part A. Part B, how do you assess these? We can start with Mark and then Aditya.
Okay, so thanks. So I mentioned before some of the kind of their adjacent to data science. So the one thing I think where people have a little bit of skill but not enough is relational database, so SQL, and that happens to be my professional background, but I think that's just necessarily true. Certainly in Intact, and I think in many other shops, SQL is you just need to have some mastery of that. And so that's one thing. And then I'd say on the other end of it, some of the visualization, so people who are very kind of focused on visualization within some kind of limited libraries within Python, and being able to do a little bit more. So I mentioned Power BI and Tableau. Those aren't, again, the most exciting applications in the world, but it doesn't take a whole lot to be able to do something with them. So having that experience, I think, is something that, I kind of expect somebody to have one of those two. Those are industry standard visualization tools. So to have one of those two is something that's kind of a gap right now.
Right. So firstly, Mark, I want to apologize. I called you Ryan a couple times earlier. I mixed your last name and first name, so I apologize for that. Right. So data science, it's an intersection, right? It's an intersection of mathematics. It's an intersection of programming. It's with visualization and communication and domain knowledge, right? So obviously, if you're coming in from school, you probably don't have domain knowledge in that area you're applying for, right? So we can skip that. But the other areas like mathematics. So what I found is that many people, lack the fundamentals of mathematics like probability, statistics, linear algebra. Like when you ask them how a particular algorithm works, like they tell us like use this algorithm, but when we ask them how it works, they kind of the explanation crumbles, right? So understanding the fundamentals is key. Even if you don't have expert knowledge, if you have fundamentals, you have a solid base upon which you can, if you have the instinct of always learning, you can build on that base and get better. But if you're assuming that you know all this expert level stuff on weak foundations, you're going to crumble eventually, right? Programming, I mean, for data science, you don't need to have like a software engineer level programming skills, but having basic statistical programming skills is important. And as Mark mentioned, visualizations, this is one key area where I find a lot of candidates are deficient in. And as a data scientist, it's important to be good at communicating your message through effective visuals and storytelling, right? And I know it's like, it's impossible to have someone that is really good in all these areas, right? That's looking for a unicorn. But we want someone that knows a little bit in each of these areas, but the key thing again, and I always stress, is continuous learning. Even if you have a PhD, I don't care if you have a PhD. If you have a PhD, you should be always willing to learn, open your mind, right? So that's important. And yeah, that's it, Adam.
Thank you, Aditya. So know your stuff is a big one, I guess. I know what a primary key is in SQL. Am I good to go? I can submit it, or I should do a bit more research, you think?
That's pretty good. Inner join, outer join.
Yeah,
that's
a good. It's a good start. Yep.
Okay, haven't mastered the joins yet. That's next time. Okay, thank you both. We're in an exciting stage now. We got the interview, which is amazing, and now we're trying not to mess it up. So what we want to know, we've focused on technical until now. Let's talk about some of the important qualities that are outside of a technical realm that you look for in a candidate. I know a couple have been addressed, but I guess we'll try to work around that. Let's start off with Aditya, then Nikki, and then Harris. And I can't speak for Aditya or Nikki's office. I haven't been there. I've been to the KPMG one. If you are sitting in that interview, you got a nice view. If you're, I guess it's out on Skype or
yeah, we were supposed to.
I guess we're all virtual at this point, but yeah, it is nice when we can go.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, for us, we were supposed to move into our brand new building in downtown, right? The CIBC Square. We were supposed to move in September. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Right. So I'm a bit of I'm a bit of an old school guy. So the most important non-technical skill for me is having good old fashioned true grit. Like, it's not a word that's used very often, but I think it's the most important non-technical skill to have, right? And I'm actually thankful for the military and like helping me build that, right? So what is grit? So grit's courage, right? You should have courage. You should not have fear of failure, right? You should manage the fear of failure, and you should not be afraid to fail, and you should learn from your failures, right? And be resilient, right? Be optimistic, confident, and creative, and follow through on your goals, right? That's a very important thing in grit, is like set a goal and follow through to the goal, not giving up, right? And be achievement oriented rather than dependable. So what I mean by that is a dependable person, you know, does what the manager asks, right? But he or she, they don't strive for that extra level. You know, they don't go above and beyond. That's where the achievement oriented aspect comes in. So, right, they might take a little bit longer to deliver, but they're going to deliver something very innovative and unique that will have good long-term implications.
Just to follow up before we go to Nikki on that, and I agree wholeheartedly on the grit piece. Also, the military side, 100% with you. How would someone show that, do you think, in an interview? How do you best convey those kind of skill sets?
So this is where, like, when I ask the person, you know, talk about your failures, right? That's where they can highlight this, right? Highlight your weaknesses and how you're trying to overcome it. Talk about your failures and what you've done. You know, talk about incidents where you didn't agree with your manager. You believed what you were doing is right, but you didn't believe what your manager was telling you was the right thing to do. So this is where the courage piece comes in, which is part of the grit, right? So these are some questions you can ask the person you're interviewing, and kind of gauge on their true grit.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Nikki. I think she's got the most grit here. She's juggling a dog who's just trying to eat her while she's got a 100-person call.
She's not trying to eat me, but she's like just getting a little bit squirrely. It's like that time of day. So anyways, I apologize for that, but maybe she's okay now. We'll see. So I think for us, one of the big things I look for through the interview is around like learning agility. So being able to show that you can come in and that you can learn things quickly. We work in so many different parts of the business, so many different technologies. So really showing that learning agility is important for us. And then I mentioned communication before. I think one of the big things is, you know, being able to translate a very technical concept for a non-technical audience. You know, a lot of times when you're working on things, you may know it in really deep detail, but can you take that and bring it to the right level for another audience? And then I talked earlier about, you know, teamwork, collaboration, like all those sorts of things are really important in our area. But yeah, I think learning agility and the ability to communicate and translate information is really important.
Thank you, Nikki. Over to you, Harris.
Yeah, so I think a few of them were already covered, but what I will say is, apart from, I think I talked earlier about the importance of individuals having worked with like clients and customers, from a non-technical standpoint, we're always looking for problem solvers. So you may ask, hey, how are you going to find out if someone's a problem solver or not? And a big thing there, to Aditya's point, is what kind of examples do you give? You know, ideally you can give examples from work where you're, you know, facing a tough situation and you had to come up with a solution to a more complex problem. So the nature of our world is such that collaboration, Nikki mentioned, like teamwork, like that is kind of key to the business. It's hand in hand. So you can't like not collaborate and expect to do well in consulting, because that's just the nature of the work. So we're always looking for individuals that are good problem solvers, kind of think like how a good engineer would think, always looking for individuals that are able to collaborate effectively within their team as well as with other people outside of their team. So leveraging relationships, being able to really put yourself out there to learn, be uncomfortable, be in situations that are not easy, but they allow you to kind of learn. And so a lot of the questions that we'll ask on the non-technical sphere will be around your ability to kind of overcome those kind of issues and the kind of adversity. So I would say that those are a few of the things that are on that side that are super important when we're looking at non-technical.
Thank you. Thank you, Harris. Thank you, everyone. I wanted to go. We're pretty well on time. We want to do one quick question. Then we want to jump into the Q&A because we have some really good questions coming through. This question just for Harris and Nikki, and this is not really specific to a stage, but just overall, there's a lot of international students now, especially with everything going on with COVID. They could be in their home country, they could be studying here, all kinds of situations like that. But just overall, there's some general tips you have aimed at international students to help them succeed throughout your recruitment process and translating the experiences that they have to a Canadian audience. So we'll start with Harris and then Nikki.
Yeah, absolutely. So I interact quite a bit with people. I mean, obviously we're global, so we're everywhere, but like I interact with a lot of people that have international experience or individuals that are abroad and they're interested in working in Canada or moving to Canada, or individuals that are international students that are already here and looking to enter the market where they have foreign experience. So one of the things is, I mean, we talked about Python earlier, like Python is Python. It doesn't really matter where you did it. And so it's all the same. So, I mean, I'll say that. And the other thing I will say is, I think it was last year, but Gartner did a research and it talked about like the shortage of IT professionals in the Canadian market by the end of 2021. And that number is like something like 200,000. And a vast majority of that number is in AI, is in machine learning, is in data science and analytics. And obviously a large spectrum is also in the software side of things. And so keeping those kind of numbers in mind, I can speak for KPMG, but I can also speak for digital talent as an industry in Canada. I find that it's fairly open to individuals that have international exposure, because not just speaking, obviously COVID's kind of thrown a wrench in a lot of our plans, but it's in a globalized world, people that come from diverse backgrounds, people that come from diverse international experience are valued. And so at KPMG, I mean, I will say that we don't differentiate between someone who has international exposure and someone who has local exposure. So if you're able to, similar to anyone who's a local candidate, if you're able to articulate well some of the things that we've already discussed, so your ability to problem solve, your ability to collaborate with others, your experience working with customers and tough engagements, if you have that experience, it doesn't matter where you did it. And it's for international students that, I'm speaking to international students that have some experience, whether it's abroad, but those that don't and are just graduating, or international students that are graduating from Canadian universities, I mean, I would say that I would bucket someone like that in the regular bucket, because there really isn't much of a differentiating factor as far as I see between someone who's gotten international exposure or someone who's got local exposure. And I spent quite a bit of time speaking with people that are like in KPMG India, or someone who's just like finishing up, in Australia, and they've never worked in consulting, but they're really interested, but they have all of the skills that we look for. So that's what I would say. I think that don't look at it as like, hey, I have to try so much harder because I don't have local exposure. I would just say, speak to the job, speak to your skills, and use your international exposure as an advantage when you're applying for a job versus a disadvantage.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Harris. I was going to say the same thing around the fact that I don't think the tips that I have for international students are any different than anybody else who's applying. We definitely hire a lot of international students into our program. And it's really just around, concise resume, highlight your experience, make sure anything that you have on there is relevant and important to the role that you're applying to. But other than that, we consider everybody, whether their experience is in Canada or anywhere else, on the same playing field. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Harris. So I just wanted to go to some Q&A. We got some really good questions here. So I will read the question. What I'm thinking is for our panelists, if you want to answer it, maybe just put up your hand. And if you're Nikki, maybe I guess just unmute yourself if you'd like, and we can do it that way so we can see who wants to answer, unless it's designated accordingly. So a question coming from Frohan, Hannah, and Chi. Very similar questions you ask. We're going to combine them into one basically. But the gist of this question is realistically, I'm reading this, realistically, we can't have all the skills listed on a typical job description. So the general gist here is I am wondering how to examine these skills on job descriptions and know whether I should apply or not to waste my time based on what is written to what I have. So basically lots of stuff on a job description. How can a candidate really determine if they should be applying or not? And I don't know if anyone feels they want to address that. It's a good question.
I mean, I can, oh, Nikki, go ahead.
You can go first, Harris, if you want.
No, it's all you.
Okay.
You raise your hand. You raise your hand first. That's okay.
Let's do Nikki, Harris, and then Aditya. Did you or saw Harris?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think like anytime that there's a role posted, you want to have some of the qualifications. I think, if it's looking for a certain amount of experience and it says, 3 to 5 years and you have 2, I don't think that there's harm in applying. I go back to like making sure that you really highlight what you know through your application. And then, as you go through the interview process, if you're asked a question you don't know, just say you don't know the answer. It's okay. We don't expect, like often when we're hiring for our program, we're looking at a lot of different technologies. And so we're picking questions based on, what we think the candidate may know. And if they don't know, we can go to something else, right? So don't be afraid to say, hey, I actually don't know that. I'm willing to learn it. So I think it's not a certain percentage of the skills that you need to have, but I think if you check some of the boxes and you show that you're willing to learn everything else, I'd encourage you to apply. Over to you, Harris.
Yeah, I would really just mirror the same. I mean, if you see a job posting and you feel like you have, or that you have the majority of the skills that are on there, and you maybe just it requires 5 years experience and you have 4 or you have 3.5, like don't let that stop you from applying to a job that you're interested in. The other thing is also like be picky about the kind of jobs you're applying to, and be picky about the nature of roles you're applying to, right? But don't let something like 5 years or 6 years stop you from applying to a job if you're just shy of those number of years. The other thing is also keep in mind, on the other side, on the talent or HR side, people can usually, recruiters can see like, how many jobs or which jobs you're applying for. So being selective and applying for the kind of roles that really align with your skill set will give me more confidence in a candidate, and say that, okay, wow, like sure, they may not hit the 5-year, but they look really good and they've applied for a couple of similar roles, and so we should definitely connect and talk further. So yeah, a lot of what Nikki said, and just around that, don't be a little picky about the kind of roles you're applying for. Make sure they're aligned to your skill set.
Yeah, some of these listings, I mean, it's funny, like the technology has been around for 3 years, but the listing says you need 5 years of experience. I mean, come on, man. Like, I can completely relate with this question because I was there, and I was looking at some postings, and they're looking for unicorns. I mean, looking for a person that has like 10 different skill sets, each of which requires years of mastery, right? I mean, it's impossible for someone like to have that kind of person apply, right? But I think that if you like the company, you like the position, and you're confident and believe in yourself that you will learn these things, right? And if you can at least meet 30% of the requirements, then I think you should apply. And as Nikki mentioned, be honest in the interview and say that you're willing to learn. And being honest is important, because if you admit that you don't know something, that's much better than making things up and your manager finding out. And it's like, you can't lie, right? Sometimes you're going to get caught, and most of the times you're going to get caught, right? So it's better to highlight these well in advance.
Perfect. I don't know, Mark, if you wanted to add, or we go to the next question.
All right, I think Aditya, Harris, and Nikki covered it really well, so we can go to the next question.
Awesome. And on the don't lie piece, just good. That's good advice, just outside of recruitment too, just so anybody knows that one. I like, it's a good thing.
Good life advice, yeah.
Yeah, don't lie. Good thing, you'll get caught. Okay, this is one coming from, Frohan. Frohan, are you lying a lot? You're saying thank you? I'm just kidding. That was a good question. Thank you, Frohan, for that. This one is coming from Diana and Ayat. So question here, more on the technical side. What type of coding problems typically are being asked, or typically candidates are being asked to solve in AI, ML type job interviews? And there's a second part here. Is it data structures and algorithms? Is it ML frameworks and libraries, coding skills? Or is it general theoretical ML, TL knowledge? So anybody want to tackle that one?
For in Intact, there's sort of two stages. So there's a basic kind of coding exercise that's automated, and that would cover things that are lower level. So it would cover data structures and algorithms to a certain extent. And then there would be a follow-up interview that's more in depth and kind of goes into into greater depth, more sort of end-to-end scenarios. So it's sort of split between those two. Earlier in the phase, more bread and butter coding. Later, more in depth.
I'll just add a little bit. So so what we ask during an interview is we ask the individual to we're going to ask them, technical questions that are knowledge based, but we're also going to ask them to go through some projects. And based on how that interview went, we also will give them a use case, that takeaway use case that they can go home and work on and then present at a later date. So that use case would have data, it would require a presentation. So how they can communicate their analysis. So these are the different things that we test.
Thank you, Aditya. Okay, so we can go on. I think we got time. Let's do one more for Chi's. This question is from Chi. Sorry, I kind of grouped them in before with Frohan and Hannah. This is from Chi. This question is really aimed for roles that require very little experience, I believe. So, as a new grad without work experience, how can we compete with people who already have 2 to 3 years of work experience? So everyone on this call with 2 to 3 years, you got to plug your ears, because if you can counter that. But anybody wanted to address that one?
I can start.
Nikki Harris-Mark, I think I saw.
Awesome.
Okay.
So I think for us, like for my program, we're not looking for a ton of work experience. We're typically looking for, if you have some co-op experience, that's great. If you don't, I think it's around like highlighting what kind of like personal projects you've been involved in that have helped you build out that skill set, or have you attended hackathons maybe where you've like worked collaboratively in a team to build, to do certain things. So I think highlighting just like projects, hackathons, or any personal projects where you show that sort of passion for technology, those things will help you comparing yourself to other people. For us, like we're not necessarily looking for people with 3 years of work experience. So, I think it's also then just like looking for the right kind of role if you are really truly a new grad without that kind of work experience.
Yeah, so if you obviously haven't had a chance to be in the job market, and you haven't had a chance to like work, let's say for 2 or 3 or 4 years, a lot of what employers and hiring managers are looking for at that point is, and I supported our campus team for a little while because we were so busy on that side, and though I don't have a lot of experience with new grads, I can tell you that that we're looking for everything else outside of your full-time work experience. So that includes, to Nikki's point, it includes all the project work you did while you were in university. It includes all the examples that you can articulate in your cover letter and resume on the initiative you took, right? And what kind of initiative you took, and the things that you were involved in that still relate to your core skills or the program that your major in university, for example. Right now, with a lot of people, working from home, and a lot of people, unfortunately being out of work, it has given some time to maybe take on more courses and more learning and things of that nature, which really you can, if you had the chance to do that, if you're fortunate enough to get some time back, and you can take on those learnings, and you can articulate and kind of include that on your application. I think that all of those things can add weight in the absence of the 2 to 3 years of full-time work experience, right? So it's everything else but that. And so that's what I would say.
Yeah, those are great points. One other thing that I'd add is that you, as somebody who's graduated recently, you've probably learned some things that other people wouldn't have learned if they'd graduated 4 years ago. So it's such a fast-moving area. So I'd say we had an intern last term who did a training session for the team and taught us something. And if somebody came up and said they had opinions on GPT-3, I would be all ears. So I think you have an advantage as a recent graduate. You're in some ways on the cutting edge, and you should use that advantage and show what you know.
Perfect. Thank you all. There were a couple other questions here, and they're really interesting questions. So if it works for everybody on the stage, we could take a couple more minutes, just those, and then we can close it off. Okay, because I do think they're good questions. This one is coming from Omar. So references Nikki. Nikki earlier mentioned that getting a referral is much better than applying. My question is, how does one go about getting a referral from an individual, since not a lot of people give referrals blindly, even if you've talked to them, or that's it. That's the question.
Yeah, so I mentioned referrals for us just because we definitely look at every person that's been referred. I think somebody earlier, it might have been Harris, mentions, reaching out to people and building that, like doing that networking, not just when a role is posted, right? So like building those relationships early on is helpful. Talking to people in the program, talking to other people at Telus, just about that, and trying to build that to see if they would be comfortable giving you a referral. For us, we're always looking for referrals because it helps us know that, most of the time people are referring people who they think will be a good fit for our culture. And so that would be my advice. If you just reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, and you've never spoken to them or you've never interacted, you're like, hey, okay, great, we've connected. Now, can you be my referral? The answer is probably going to be no, right? So building out that network early on and trying to really make those connections is where you can, use that referral piece. Hopefully that answers the question.
Sounds good. If anybody want to add, or okay, we can close it. And I can attest definitely to what Nikki just said. When you get the LinkedIn invite and says, hey, please refer me, and you want to say, hey, who are you? Say hello first, tell me about yourself, and then we can go to. Okay, so I wanted to thank, just trying to close this off as we are out of time now. I wanted to thank firstly our 4 panelists for being here today. Harris, Mark, Nikki, Aditya, thank you so much for your insights. We've all appreciated it. I want to thank all of our viewers, and look, they're all thanking you as well. Thank all of our viewers for your participation, making this interesting, and giving us some great questions. What I will say is our event platform is still running. The rally booths will be closed at this point. But if you want to still visit the booth from the Chime side, where you can see links to all of the jobs from our participants today, and you can see what they're looking for, et cetera, that's still open. We also recommend you can visit their careers pages and check out their roles. And you should apply because you got all the secrets now. So you got it. Excel, SQL, and everything. I'm just got everything else. So thank you so much. This really brings our 2020 AI Masters Summit and Career Fair to a close. I hope you had an amazing time, and we will see you at the next one. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Adam. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Thanks, Adam. Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.